Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to the Uddhava-gita course. And this is our 9th class today, and it's a very special class because today we're starting the amazing story of Guru Dattatreya, very famous personality in the whole Vedic tradition, still very important in the Hindu tradition, Dattatreya. So Krishna will be teaching Uddhava the teachings of Dattatreya. And his teachings are amazing because he becomes enlightened through nature, by observing nature, by just being in contact with nature. Remember, that was the topic of the previous classes. Krishna was saying how you could become enlightened by using your intelligence and observing things properly. So then he's going to give this supreme example of that in the form of Guru Dattatreya. Anyway, so this is the 9th class, and if you want to watch the previous 8 classes and always have access to the whole Uddhava-gita course, make sure to become a member of the channel. Right now, the instructions are here in the description. This class will be available for just 1 week, and after that, all the previous classes are only for the members. So, who is Dattatreya? So Dattatreya, he is mentioned, his parents are mentioned in this same book, Srimad Bhagavatam, much earlier. So he is the child of Atri, Guru Atri, a famous Guru Atri, and his mother, Anusuya. So Anasuya and Atri, they're different stories, but basically they wanted to have a child. And as you'll see in the scriptures, when a great personality wants to have a child, they don't just rush off to the honeymoon suite or something. They actually, pray for it. They actually prepare themselves spiritually, asking for a great child to come, or sometimes in the case of very advanced devotees, they ask for God to come personally, to you become my child. If they have this kind of paternal, loving affection for God, they say, you become my child, as was the case with Nanda and Yashoda. And also, of course, Vasudeva, and so you can have Krishna as your son directly. You can have him directly as your son. But Atri and Anusuya, they didn't go that far. But what they did is Atri prayed. It's interesting also. It's interesting because it's in the Bhagavatam, and you have this great soul, Atri, great famous cosmic guru, Atri. And he's not sure who God is. That's the great thing about it. He's not sure. So he knows there are the 3 great Purushas. There's Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. And he knows these 3. It's there's Brahma, there's Shiva, there's Vishnu, there's Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma. So he's not sure which one is who is the Supreme Lord, and he's not sure. But he knows about Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So he says, I'm going to pray to the 3 of them. So he prays, and the different stories of how he gets them. Some says he just asks for it and he gets it immediately because he'd done so much great work in his life, because he'd been such a great guru and created so much, amazing service, that they just gave it to him. In the Bhagavatam, the story is he performed austerities by standing on one leg on the tip of his toes with his arms raised up, and he stayed there waiting for the boom. So he practiced tapasya. So he was practicing tapas in a very uncomfortable position to go beyond body to ask for this boom. So finally, the 3 of them decide to bless him. So the 3 of them, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva, they all come. They say, yeah, this guy's so good, let's all go there. So they all go there to Atri, and they say, look, you prayed for this, so here it is. So it's the idea then being that Dattatreya is the child of the 3. So he is a direct, he's an expansion, a child, you call it what you will, but he gets the Shakti of the 3 of them, Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva. which is pretty good, right? So he gets the blessings, he becomes a spiritual son of the three of them. And that's why you'll see, and when you look up Dattatreya, you'll see sometimes there's images of him with three heads, representing Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And you also see them with the different paraphernalia that each of them had. For example, the conch for Vishnu, and the trident for Shiva, and the little bowl for Lord Brahma. So he gets the three of them. And also what's really interesting is that you'll see pictures of Dattatreya, and at his feet will be three dogs, which you don't usually see dogs in holy art in India, because dogs are considered, traditionally dogs weren't as appreciated as they are today. So, but the three dogs represent the three Vedas, because he's like, he's so knowledgeable, he has so much knowledge. The Vedas are at his feet like dogs. So anyway, it's an amazing personality. To this day, there are temples to Dattatreya, because since he's the three, people figured, hey, if we worship him, we got it covered too. We don't have Vishnu, Brahma, Shiva. Our bases will be covered if we worship Dattatreya. So you'll still find active Dattatreya temples in the world. There's one in Trinidad, Tobago, and there's others in India. So that's what we're going to start today. The Dattatreya teachings, how he became enlightened through nature. So here it is. We're starting, this is verse 24 of chapter 7 of the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Krishna says the following. In this regard, sages cite a historical narration concerning the conversation between the greatly powerful King Yadu and an Avadhuta. Purport. Lord Krishna will narrate this story to show Uddhava how rational intelligence can be utilized in Bhakti Yoga to acquire Vedic knowledge, and how ultimately an intelligent person will come to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's interesting that actually Dattatreya isn't mentioned by name in this narration. Curious. But here's just mentioned as the example, historical narration of an Avadhuta, a holy, wandering man. But later it was understood that this is Dattatreya. Verse 25. So, he's starting the story now. Krishna is starting to tell the story. Maharaj Yadu, King Yadu, once observed a certain Brahmana Avadhuta, who appeared to be quite young and learned, wandering about fearlessly. Being himself most learned in spiritual science, the king took the opportunity and inquired from him as follows. So King Yadu, famous King Yadu of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna, appears within the Yadu dynasty. So famous King Yadu, he was also an enlightened person. He was intelligent. He was spiritually, advanced. And when you're spiritually advanced and you're in sattva, your mind's open and you see things as they are. So just by seeing this person, he could tell this person is advanced. I can see that this is not a regular person. Just like you get the mood, you feel it. It's like the vibes. You call it what you will, but he picked up and said, "Wow, I think this guy's got something that I can learn from." So being intelligent is just like, oh, maybe I can ask him for instructions. Sri Yadu said, "Oh, Brahmana, I see that you're not engaged in any practical religious activity, and yet you have acquired a most expert understanding of all things and all people within this world. Kindly tell me, sir, how did you acquire this extraordinary intelligence? And why are you traveling freely throughout the world, behaving as if you were a child?" So why did he say that? Because an Avadhuta The name Avadhuta not only means a wandering sage, but specifically one that is not adhering to social norms. An Avadhuta does whatever. So he's seeing this Brahman, he's not like dressed up all nicely as a Brahmin and, doing rituals, with, married, because, the Brahmins were married with them. No, he's just wandering. It's like he's not following social rules, and yet he could tell he was very enlightened. He picked that up, he felt it. He's like, you're so enlightened, and yet you're just wandering around. How did this happen? What's going on? And then King Yadu continues. Generally, human beings work hard to cultivate dharma, artha, kama, and also knowledge of the soul. And their usual motive is to increase the duration of their lives, acquire fame, and enjoy material opulence. So he says, normally people are working hard, and he mentions, the three goals. He didn't mention, of course, moksha, but the three human goals. He mentions dharma, artha, kama. And if you like this topic, I just did a video on my channel, on this channel, about the four, which is dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And I also talk about the fifth, prema. So that's here in this channel if you want to see that, to understand what those human goals are and why they were so central to the whole Vedic society, Vedic culture. So he's saying, look, people normally, they're working hard for dharma, artha, and kama, and they're doing that so that they can have, and also, some spiritual knowledge, and so that they can have a long life, fame, and material opulence, right? That's what people usually want, right? They want fame, a long life, they want health. That's what everybody's doing, right? They want to live long, they want to be famous, and they want to be wealthy, right? That's about it, right? I mean, that summarizes human endeavor, generally, right? That's what people want. Health, wealth, and fame. So it's funny that it's here, it's exactly what we're still doing. Purport. An intelligent person should understand that if there is an eternal soul different from the body, then real happiness must lie in our eternal situation, beyond the bondage of material nature. However, ordinary persons, even when discussing spiritual subject matters, generally desire to become famous or to increase their wealth and duration of life by such spiritual practices. Most common people think, for example, that the yoga system is meant for improving one's health, and that one may pray to God for money, and that one's spiritual knowledge is meant for increasing one's prestige in society. Maharaj Yadu wants to clarify that the young Brahmana Avadhuta is not like ordinary persons, and that he is actually on a spiritual platform, as will be explained in the following verses. So it's very funny, because even today, if you use, you can research this on the internet, like, what is yoga? If you're like, why do people search for yoga? When people search for yoga, what do they want? Why are they searching for yoga? And if you do that using these kind of analytical search tools, what you'll see is all about losing weight. Can yoga help me lose weight? Can yoga help me sleep better? Can yoga help me with back pains? That's all that, that is the main thing people want from yoga. And of course, this is yoga, and this, they don't care for it. Nobody wants to hear oh, yeah, who cares about becoming enlightened and becoming free from all suffering in this life and in the next? No, I just want to lose, some belly fat. That's what people go for yoga. But there is much more, and I'm glad that you're here hearing much more. Verse 28, you, however, although capable, learned, expert, handsome, and most eloquent, are not engaged in doing anything, nor do you desire anything. Rather, you appear stupefied and maddened, as if you were a ghostly creature. So this is Avadhuta. Avadhutas, they're like mad, they behave in weird ways. They just, sometimes they don't talk, they sometimes they just decide not to say anything that you can understand, so they can behave in very crazy ways. There are other examples in the Bhagavatam of this kind of behavior. It's a funny practice. It's a curious, let's say, spiritual practice that is mentioned in the scriptures, of just behaving like a mad person, just like a crazy homeless person, but yet maintaining this bright connection, this intense spiritual connection, just not wanting to be involved in material, mundane society in any way. So just rejecting. It's like a very spiritualized hippie or something, but even more crazy, like a crazy hippie. But still, Maharaj Yadu, he didn't get fooled by it. He could tell, no, this guy's good. So what's going on here? Purport. Ignorant persons often think that renounced spiritual life is meant for those who are impotent or homely or incompetent in practical worldly affairs. Sometimes foolish people say that religious life is a crutch for those who are not expert enough to achieve a high status in society. Therefore, King Yadu has described the qualities of the mendicant Brahmana in order to show that the Brahmana has taken to renounced spiritual life in spite of great potential for worldly success. So he was a Brahmin who was very intelligent, learned, good-looking, expert, capable. He could have done anything. But he chose to live like this, renouncing mundane life, to just dedicate himself to his intense spiritual ecstasy. And to sharing, as you'll see, he's a guru. He's going to share, he shares his knowledge with people who are interested. Still, the Avaduta has renounced material life and taken to Krishna consciousness. Going back home, back to Godhead, for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge is the real work of all human beings. That's a great line, isn't it? That is the real work of a human being. Becoming spiritually enlightened like you're all doing. That's the real work. Everything else is just temporary. It's completely meaningless. It just comes and goes. It won't make any difference in the long run, but this will. The followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu simultaneously cultivate their own Krishna consciousness and strenuously endeavor in missionary work to help others become Krishna consciousness. So if you want to have something to do with your life, this is the best thing you can do. Help the world become enlightened. And by doing so, you become enlightened yourself. It's a great way. It works for you, everybody benefits. Krishna is happy. Krishna is actually super happy because he says in the Bhagavad-gita that no servant of his, no devotee will please him more than that who teaches Bhagavad-gita. So he loves it. That's the best thing. Of course, he's the father. You're helping his other children come back home. They're lost, right? I'm a father. Somebody helped my lost child come home. I wouldn't know what to do in terms of gratitude. It would be the supreme thing, right? Anything else that person could do for me, could, clean my house and maybe, do something and build something for me, but it wouldn't be as good as bringing my child back, right? Nothing would compare to it. So that's what Krishna does as well. Often foolish persons deride the devotees by saying, why don't you get a job? They think that one who is sincerely endeavoring for spiritual enlightenment and who is also enlightening others is not doing anything practical. Foolish materialists will pay millions of dollars to extend their lives by a few weeks or months in a hospital. But they do not appreciate someone endeavoring for eternal life. There is no actual logic in material life. The act of trying to enjoy without Krishna is in itself the culmination of irrationality. And thus we cannot expect to find anything ultimately rational or logical in a materialistic life devoid of Krishna consciousness. Many devotees of Krishna come from wealthy, learned, and influential families, and they take to Krishna consciousness in order to perfect their lives, and certainly not due to lack of opportunity for material advancement. Although sometimes persons in material distress approach the Supreme Lord for help in material life, a real devotee of Lord Krishna voluntarily gives up all types of material enjoyment, knowing that nothing but love of Krishna and service to his lotus feet are the actual perfection of life. Really nice purport, really fired up purport from my spiritual master, who's totally dedicated his whole life. And he was like this, my spiritual master, Hridayananda Das Goswami. Family, lots of money, everybody, he could have been super rich, he could have done anything he wanted, but no, he has dedicated, his entire life, over 50 years now, in missionary activity. So it's a great example of that as well. Okay, verse 29. Although, this is still Yadu speaking with Dattatreya, although all people within the material world are burning in the great forest fire of lust and greed, you remain free and are not burned by that fire. You are just like an elephant who takes shelter from a forest fire by standing within the waters of the Ganges River. So he's saying, this example is used a lot. It's a good example. It's just seeing the world as a burning forest fire. So forest fires, I'm sure you've seen, at least on, you've seen videos of it. They're very scary. I mean, I used to live in a place that we used to have these giant fires. These natural fires would come, just raging towards the house. Very scary. It's just like, it's not something you want to, it was a good experience, I guess, but it's very scary. I had been in my farm, I had buildings, devoured by fire. I saw hurricanes of fire created in front of me, as I was running away, with my children and my wife, trying to get away from the fire. So very scary, but, at least you get these metaphors well. So they're very scary, they're very loud, they're very fast. It's just this immense, intense heat. It's just like, wow. And of course in a forest with trees, this is like in a place with grasslands. In a forest, it's even worse because then you have these giant trees catching fire. But then they use this example of a forest fire. So like life, material life for the soul is a forest fire of greed and lust. It's just burning, killing you just everywhere, coming from all sides, greed and lust, and this intense bombardment of things, of enjoyment, of ego, and pride, and it's just like this horrible fire. But then he says, but you, all this fire of this material, mundane Maya, of illusion, and yet there you are, all cool and collected. And he says, like an elephant in the middle of the river. And there's a fire, you go in the middle of the river, that's the best thing, right? Okay, can't get me here. That's where you become protected in the middle of the river. So he gives this great example. Purport. The natural result of transcendental bliss is described in this verse. The young Brahmana was physically very attractive, and his senses were full of potency for material enjoyment. Yet he was not at all affected by material lust. This position is called mukti, or liberation. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur is the spiritual master of my spiritual master's spiritual master. Explains that within the Ganges flow great currents of water, capable of extinguishing a blazing fire. If an elephant maddened by sex desire stands within the Ganges, its powerful cooling currents extinguish his lust and the elephant becomes pacified. Similarly, ordinary human beings trapped in the cycle of birth and death are constantly harassed by the enemies of lust and greed, which never allow the mind to be completely peaceful. But if, following the example of the elephant, one situates oneself within the cooling waves of transcendental bliss, then all material desire will soon be extinguished, and one will become shanta, or peaceful. As described in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakta Nishkama Ataeva Shanta. Thus, everyone should take to the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and cleanse himself in the cooling waters of Krishna consciousness, or real eternal consciousness. Verse 30. Translation: O Brahmana, we see that you are devoid of any contact with material enjoyment, and that you are traveling alone, without any companions or family members. Therefore, because we are sincerely inquiring from you, please tell us the cause of the great ecstasy that you are feeling within yourself. So he picked everything up, he glorified him. This is the Vedic style. Whenever you have a conversation, and we saw this with Uddhava, right? Just before Krishna started teaching, Uddhava glorifies. This is the standard model. Like the student will approach the guru, and first, these are very enlightened students. So first they glorify and they speak words of great wisdom already. They kind of it's a way of, it's a way of not only, being honorable to the speaker they want to get information from, but it's also a way of showing that they're not so bad themselves. They have some knowledge. They are good students as well. So it shows that they're perfectly ready to get the information. They're good students. They're qualified, and they're being respectful, and asking for knowledge. So all the qualifications are there for a great exchange of spiritual knowledge. So. He's asking, he's spoken of this, and now he's beginning to ask, please tell us how this happened. What is the cause of this spiritual ecstasy you are feeling? Purport. The word kevalatmana is significant here. Unless one has practical realization of the Supreme Soul and the individual soul who reside together within the heart of every living being, it is very difficult to artificially adopt the sannyas order of life and travel without the association of wife, children, and other family members. So unless you're really full of loving contact with God, naturally you'd need that loving contact externally, mundanely. So you can't not have this and not have this. You can't take it. A person, human being can't take that kind of loneliness. So you have to feel the more contact you have with God, the more love you experience receiving and giving to God, that just fills you, satisfies you completely. And then you're no longer dependent on mundane relationships, on the behaviors of others. Because you have so much love already. You're experiencing, you're giving, you're receiving so much love already. It really works. So this is what they're alerting to here. The nature of every living being is to make friends and with others, and to offer his love to a suitable person. One who has realized the Supreme Person is satisfied to always carry the personality of Godhead within his or her heart as his or her constant companion. Unless one has realized that Krishna is one's only true friend and that Krishna is within one's heart, one will remain attached to the temporary relationships of the material world. Lord Krishna continued. So now Krishna interrupts his description of the story. Lord Krishna continued, verse 31. The intelligent King Yadu, always respectful to the Brahmanas, waited with bowed head as the Brahmana pleased with the king's attitude, began to reply. So again, it worked, the king, because he's the king as well. So he doesn't want to come across like, hey, I'm the king, I'm the big boss. So you better do what I want to say as, hey, here I am, I'm so cool. No, he's all humble, like, no. He qualifies him, he qualifies himself as a spiritual student, and then he waits with his head bowed, waiting for instruction. Very nice. So then this convinces Dattatreya to break his silence, break his spiritual, detachment from the world, and speak with King Yadu. So here, verse 32, Dattatreya will begin speaking. The Brahmana said, "My dear king, with my intelligence, I have taken shelter of many spiritual masters." Very important. "Having gained transcendental understanding from them, I now wander about the earth in a liberated condition. Please listen as I describe them to you." So, this is how he starts, by saying, where did I get, what's my basis? Hey, I have taken shelter of many spiritual masters. They're like, oh, who are they? You expect a list of humans, of names. Oh, there's so-and-so and that one, and I went to that ashram. But no, none of them are actual practicing spiritual masters. We'll see that his spiritual masters are other kinds. There are some people, but there's also just things, events, animals, insects. So he takes instruction from nature. So very amazing, just from observing nature and a bit of human life as well. But of just observing, just from looking around. The word buddhi upashrita in this verse indicates that the Brahmana spiritual masters did not directly speak to him. This is very odd, because normally the guru speaks to you. That's how you get it. You read his words, you see, that's how you get spiritual knowledge. In all other cases, that's how it works, but not with him. With him, he got it through using his intelligence, buddhi upadhyaya. So with using intelligence, he learned from them by his intelligence. All living entities who are inimical to Lord Krishna glorify useless material things and spend their lives trying to lord it over the material objects they falsely worship. Thus, the conditioned souls try to increase their duration of life as well as their fame and beauty by means of mundane dharma, artha, and kama. King Yadu noticed that the saintly Avadhuta did not behave like that. Therefore, the king was inquisitive to find out the actual situation of the Brahmana. In reply to the king, the saintly Brahmana states, "I do not consider the 24 elements of the physical world as objects of my sense gratification, and therefore I don't consider accepting or rejecting them. Rather, I accept the material elements as my instructing spiritual masters. Thus, even though wandering throughout the material world, I am never bereft of service to the Guru. Taking shelter of steady intelligence, I travel about the earth, constantly engaged on the transcendental platform. By intelligence, I transcend useless desires, and my ultimate goal is the loving devotional service of the Lord. Now, I shall explain to you about my 24 spiritual masters." So this is, the spiritual masters of the tradition. They created this speech. The speech isn't actually in the verse. This was a purport. So this is, this is how they added some more words to the verse, so you understand the mood. This is the mood. They're trying to explain the mood he's in. So it's very wonderful. So that's it. Next class, we'll start hearing about his 24 spiritual masters in nature. Come back for that, and thank you so much for your time and your patience. Have a wonderful day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.